We're Group 3, and we have the 16 in Coolidge, or Big Beaver in Coolidge site.
Yeah, there you go.
We have the Big Beaver in Coolidge site, which is the old Kmart headquarters. My name is Tom Newman. This is
I'm Priya Iyer.
Pierre Robertson.
Dave Pafford.
And Lily Diego.
All right.
So our site is the old Kmart headquarters in Troy, Michigan, and we kind of started off with a basic analysis of the site and some basic site facts. So it runs along the main corridor of Big Beaver and intersection of Coolidge Highway. The main interchange is the I-75 that kind of brings people to this corridor. The site was actually adjacent to Somerset Collection, which is a very well-known mall and shopping area in the Detroit region. The size of the site is about 40 acres. It was purchased by Forbes Frankel Troy for $14 million at the beginning of this year. There are some great opportunities with the site, with the amount of visibility that's available right along the intersection of Big Beaver and Coolidge Highway. There is Cunningham Drive, which kind of creates a link road opportunity, a ring road opportunity, and connects to the Somerset Collection. We have offices on this side, and we have residential at the back of the site. The existing condition of the site right now is it's an abandoned, it's a beautiful building that was originally designed with a Smith roof. It's abandoned because Kmart decided to move its headquarters to Royal Oak. Some of the pros of the site is, again, the ring road that connects and the visibility that's available in this corner. Some of the cons of the site are the site is kind of split in half, with the building kind of running along the diagonal and triangular area on the front side of facing Big Beaver and Coolidge, and the back side, which is the existing parking lot right now, is usually just abandoned and vacant. The site, the building itself is really not very functional because there's a long diagonal that kind of takes a large amount of time to walk from one end of the building to the other. So it's not really pedestrian friendly. It's also really hard to kind of parcel spaces within the existing building for retail. So we are suggesting demolishing the building.
Okay, this is zone. Basically, this is our site. It's a planned unit development, and as you can see, we're basically surrounded by office spaces just adjacent to the site. This is the Somerset Mall, and outside of this location, you got mostly single-family residential and some multi-family residential. The planned unit development is a development consisting of a combination of land uses wherein the specific development configuration and allocation is based upon a comprehensive plan meeting. And there really aren't any restrictions. As you can see here, Article 35 states that physical standards relating to matters such as building height, bulk, density, parking, and setbacks will be determined during that meeting.
Demographically speaking, we already have a good retail market in this area with the Somerset Collection. So there's a lot of people already used to going to this area for doing their shopping, so we can at least think about that when we're looking at demographic statistics. The region surrounding the site is mainly made up of single-family dwellings in the higher income range. I don't want to speak to averages, but there's a large population of people, making $75,000 to $150,000 a year, and not to mention the adjacencies to Birmingham and some of the other more well-to-do communities in the area. So, speaking of education and age, there's like a median age of about 40 years old, and most of the people in the community are college educated, and then I believe it was 23% of the people in the immediate area have a higher than bachelor's degree education. So for whatever that speaks to, shopping practices, it seems to be a good area to do some developments, retail speaking, and then possibly more. They have money, so yes, please. When we were talking about a trade area of 15 miles, this was something that we got from SEMCOG, just speaking to the amount of wealth in the area. And these darker regions are the highest income bracket of 73,000 and larger. And then our site is just right in the middle of that, so it gives us a lot of opportunity to bring in a large customer base.
This is a corridor study that was commissioned in 2007. And basically, the intent of the corridor study was to strengthen Troy's position as a regional economic force and to evolve this boulevard and the adjacent land uses to world-class status. Basically, the red here is the boundary of the DDA district. Here is your I-75. And along here, you have a 6-lane boulevard. And Cunningham Drive is a 2-lane road. So it just gives you an idea of what they're planning for this context, or for this site context.
You have 3 minutes.
So based on a lot of the research we did, analysis through the Big Beaver study and market analysis and demographics, we saw some planning features that we wanted to use to our advantage and some things that we wanted to steer clear from. We noticed that based on the Big Beaver study, they're trying to create a mixed-use development, or they're planning for that in their adoption of the 2008 master plan. So they're trying to create more of an urban setting right where our site is. The major access intersection of 16 and Coolidge allows for that direct traffic and almost kind of a heavy flow to the direct area that we're going to be at. There's a ring road that does allow for kind of that residential, commercial, retail integration. Because of that connection community that already is established and the strong retail development that's there, we thought that we could use that to our advantage in creating a type of village that, you know, marries the two. There are potentials of those quadrant connections right at Big Beaver and 16 between the retail and residential and office. And from this we can start phasing developments beyond just our site into the surrounding areas.
Well, this one is just kind of taking a look at the hotel, shopping mall, some uses that we were thinking of for our site and what already exists in the Troy area. And something that hit us was there are no movie theaters. There is just a couple of specialty grocers. There's also the sports facilities and gyms are more kind of on the other side of the freeway. And this gives us some things to think about for our existing site.
You need to go ahead and tell us what your proposal
Okay.
is. Yeah, go back one real quick. Say that this slide basically outlines a lot of the tenants. Even though Somerset Collection's they're landlocked, and there's a lot of room for expansion. There's a lot of prime tenants that are currently not represented in the market. Basically, it's as Lily was mentioning, it's a vertical mixed-use development that would capitalize on the Somerset Collection. The first phase, somewhere around the second quarter of 2014, would be a Bloomingdale's anchor here on Big Beaver, and the opposite end, a movie theater above retail. Also, fitness, a boutique hotel, and basically a couple 100,000 square feet of small shop inline restaurants. The second phase would be a grocery store and some additional inline retail, and then also some residential, primarily rental, to take advantage of the lack of rental units in the market and the need for supporting empty nesters and potentially younger people that want to live in more of an urban context. The third phase would be a signature office here in Big Beaver. That would be somewhere around the second quarter of 2018. And the fourth phase would be market-driven, but be additional spec office on the backside of the parking deck, complementing the office that's already there. And this is basically just kind of a diagram showing the uses. Bloomingdale's down here, major tenants, grocery, and then residential to the north as it transitions to the single-family residential that's already existing. You can see on the second level, the theater above, again, maximizing use of the land, and the urban context and the urban kind of grid kind of lending itself to Gordon Cullen's serial vision, as you talked about early in the semester. That's pretty much it. We're in the process of doing calculations, pro formas, land costs, and that kind of thing, which will be presented for the next BA.
Okay, let me give you some feedback. I think number one, the focus, this is a site with lots of opportunity. You have a more, in a way, you have a very complicated problem because there are many different things you can do with the site. It's clearly a great market. It's the best, it's the best location within the Detroit metropolitan area because it sits next to Somerset. So in that sense, it sits next to the great anchor, which anchors your draw from the entire community. So this is truly, whether you live in Ann Arbor, you live in Windsor, whether you live in Lansing, whether you live in Bloomfield Hills, this is a project that you do visit. However, the great thing about regional retail is that it creates a sort of consistency in a draw. When you do a great job the way Somerset has, there's great consistency in terms of the store type, and it provides a full solution for the customer. The problem is, if you go across the street, how are you going to get the customer out of Somerset to get in her car, to drive down the street, to get out of her car to then shop at Bloomingdale's? Unless it's directly connected, and there's no way to really directly connect it, not in a really functional way, but it won't really, because where's the skywalk going to go through the department store? It's not really going to work. If you think, unless you want to move Nordstrom, and move Nordstrom across the street and put Nordstrom and Bloomingdale's next to one another across the street, and Nordstrom's never going to do that. They're never going to take the risk of moving away from the center ice location they've got to go to an inferior location across the street, even if it's anchored with Bloomingdale's. I don't think it really works to try and do upscale retailing. I mean, you showed all those tenants available. Those tenants aren't going across the street. They're the tenants, the upscale tenants, the Bulgaris, the whatever. They're either going to go in Somerset Mall and they'll find room for them in Somerset Mall over time, or they're not going to come to the market. So while I do think there's a real retail opportunity, it's really built around what Somerset doesn't have and what can be complementary with Somerset. The theater is absolutely a clear opportunity. I'd be very careful about building a theater on the second floor. It's very expensive. The exiting, the cost of fire protection makes it very expensive to build, and theaters really don't want to pay more than $20, $22 a foot gross. And so therefore, you're not making a lot of money on the theater. By the time you put it in the air, it gets to be so expensive. You got to really believe in the value of the space in order to justify it, and maybe it will. I think there's no question there's room. There's nothing but food up and down West Big Beaver. It's all food. Having said that, you could put another 5 or 6 restaurants in my view. I can give you, we could do a study across the country and come up with 5, 6 great names. Mastro's Ocean Club, I can come up with a whole list. The restaurant across the street, which is sitting freestanding on the corner, Ocean Prime does a huge amount of business. So it just shows you that there is a real opportunity in my view. And while you can build too many of something just because the opportunity has shown that it works, doesn't mean if you keep adding it that there'll be enough. There isn't that much elasticity of market that you can continue adding indefinitely. But in this case, I think you can absolutely add food, you could add the theater. Then you should step back and think to yourself, I don't think you're going to build. You're not going to upscale Somerset. So you need to ratchet back and say, okay, what can I do from a merchandising standpoint that would be interesting? It may be more big box oriented. Maybe it's Pennies or something like that, or Kohl's, depending on where they are in the market. You hate that. You'll get your chance. I'm almost done. Four Seasons, for instance, looked at this for a while. No one's going to build an upscale hotel in Detroit right now. I mean, that would be can you imagine going to your board, say, I got a great new idea, I'm going to build a 5-star hotel in Detroit, they're going to shoot you. Or you're not going to be alive by the time you leave the room. So there's not, for the moment, but I would build the opportunity for an upscale hotel because I think the market over time, if the market recovers, there'll be some opportunity. I think the idea of office in some configuration along Big Beaver makes all the sense in the world. You might want the office on the corner, sort of. I mean, I don't know where you want to put the office in terms of urban planning, where it makes the most sense. So I'm done.
All right, give me the plan back. A couple of lessons to be learned. All right, you've placed the anchor here. It's the reverse place that you place the anchor. You'd want it back here because you want people to go through the center to get the anchor. You wouldn't want them to stop here and not go through the shops. You'd want them to filter through the shops, or perhaps you'd get some sales to get to the anchor. The other thing, you've separated this by virtue of doing these two sort of rounds. You need the strength of one development, so you want to keep the development, the units as close as possible to take advantage of the traffic and to make it easy for the customer to get from one place to the other. I liked your sketch. It was your rendering was very nice, and it could be that kind of a center. But it breaks down in terms of the way it's planned. It's not a good plan the way you've done it. You should replan it for next week.
I agree also.
All right.
Bloomingdale's would never go without
Yeah.
parking. They're going to want parking there.
The other thing,
Bloomingdale's won't go, period, but whatever anchor store you'll want.
is the parking below grade? I don't understand it. I don't see a section, so I don't understand. Where's the parking? Above grade?
Yeah, it's all in decks.
Well, then it
What they're
doesn't.
trying to do is they're trying
It
to
doesn't fit the rendering. I mean, this won't work that well because the shops will be clouded by the decks,
Well, let me say it differently.
and you
There's
can't
no-
afford to go below grade.
No, you can't afford it. Well, let me just show you.
Yeah. So
You got to think about this as a shopper.
Yeah.
There's no what my father's trying to say. There's no logical way to shop this. You know, typically when you design a mall, if you think about the
Yeah.
mall here, you have a store here, and you have a store here, and the customer goes through, can go back and forth and see all the shops. You want 80% of your customers to see 80% of the stores on a typical trip. That's what we'd like to design for, as a capability. Whether they do it or not is another story. But you'd like it to make it easy, and that should be your ideal. But here, you know, the customer's back. You know, there's no logical way to shop this. So what ends up happening is you end up you fragment the traffic. So what traffic you have isn't equal, and you end up with hot zones and bad zones. You can't lease a lot of this, which is what you have. And a lot of the lifestyle development, you see these like pretty sort of urban, new urbanist sort of, you know, lifestyle centers, which are built sort of, you know, open air, et cetera, and they create these blocks. And the problem is that unless it's in such a dense neighborhood that everything sort of works, a lot of the areas that are built don't have enough traffic to survive. And in retail, stores are only going to stay there if they do sales. So you got to think about what you're doing. There's 625,000 feet of mall shops. Doesn't include the anchors in Somerset. 625,000 feet, they can find room for everybody that's in moderate and up retailer. Certainly upper moderate and up retailer.
if you're going to put in Bloomingdale's, so you have to put in shops that complement.
But they'll never get Bloomingdale's to go there. The problem is,
Yeah.
you know, there's an old story he tells when Bloomingdale, in those days it was Robinson's, went across the street from South Coast Plaza, and we were working on a site down the street. My father sent the chairman of Robinson's at the time a set of binoculars so he could see his customer because he was never going to see him. It's a true story.
Close the store.
That's true, they closed the store. He's now the chairman of Bloomingdale's. He's never forgotten. What he's never going to do is go across the street from Somerset, I guarantee you. Okay, you know, you make a mistake once, shame on you. You do it twice, you know, you don't live. So I do think, you know, the theater, the upscale grocery, the Whole Foods kind of thing, I know they're sort of up the street here, but you would think that there's an opportunity for that kind of a thing. And then I think you need to think about this conceptually in terms of, yes, as a restaurant, and you need to think of this as yourselves, as a shopper. What group of stores fit together as a unit that are consistent and coherent from a shopping experience, and that's your target market, you build it.
Son, we're running out of time.
Goodbye. All right, okay.
All right, I would suggest that the parking be placed in a sector as a multi-level parking garage, and that the anchor be put in the far corner, and that the shops lead to the anchor. It can be done very poetically, like you've shown in your rendering, but you should to spread this all around won't work, because you got traffic problems, you got cars going through where people are going to be walking, and it's going to be very troublesome. All right?
I do think you can veneer,
Huh?
what you're trying to do is veneer the parking.
Yeah, or it could be around the corner. Doesn't
You
it?
know, the problem with that a little
Yeah.
bit is that one side you're looking
All right.
at the parking deck.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Let me get.
Thank you very much.